Welcome back to the Just Fantasy Baseball podcast. Baseball season is officially over. So now it's the fantasy baseball playoffs. It's football season. So if you want to talk fantasy football, we could do that. But there are a couple of headlines from the baseball world, as a lot of people are in their fantasy baseball playoffs starting this week. And my number one headline, do you start him? Do you give him a start if you are in the fantasy baseball playoffs, I should say? Justin Verlander, what do you do with him?
It's a good question. I would probably. I mean, I forget who's he starting this week against, or potentially.
He got rocked tonight, Mr. Washed in Verlander.
Oh, well, maybe not. I was thinking I'm sorry. I was thinking you were talking Scherzer, DeGrom, and I was like, oh, Verlander. Like I threw him in the same category, but that's not what we're talking about here. No. Okay. So he got rocked, sent to AAA. Yeah. I mean,
Justin Verlander got sent down?
That's what it looks like, right?
I know he started tonight's game. I didn't see. Was that a headline after tonight's game? That would be hilarious.
Unless this is probably a joke, because now I have.
No, yeah, that's a joke. He's given up. But I did see somebody say, do you think, and I was talking to Ricky Ricardo about this, I think, today. Do you give him a start in the
Looks
playoffs?
like his next start's against the Angels.
I know, but let's say you're going into the playoffs. Houston's going to make the playoffs.
Yeah. So I think you're lucky.
Runs.
You're lucky that you're lucky it's on a Saturday, because you can wait till the end of the week to make that call. Because by the end of the week, you should know, yes, my ratios are in good standing. I'm not going to risk it. Or, hey, I need every strikeout I can get. My ratio's already torched, or I'm already ahead by enough. So I would say wait, because you have time. If you're in a weekly locked league, like you have to make the decision on Monday, then no, absolutely not. Right. You can find someone better on waivers, but yeah, that's good point. I didn't see that.
Couple of injuries. Alec Boehm and Jeff McNeil. Jeff McNeil's season is over. Well, it's been an up and down year for Jeff McNeil. I traded him away at some point this season. And then ultimately, remember, I traded him for the pitcher, Garrett Crochet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I love that move for me. Crochet's been good.
Sure.
And McNeil is now out for the year with a wrist fracture. I mean, this is a guy who I yelled about on this podcast, who Mets fans yelled about. They want him gone. We want nothing to do with him. And now, I mean, he's been relatively solid for the last few months, since the All-Star break, really, which is a month and a half, 2 months, pretty much. More than 2 months. I don't know, Matt.
McNeil feels like a guy that the Mets fans are ready to write off, even though I think they love him in that city. They feel so ready to write him off. Like, he doesn't feel like he's enough for them. He's
I mean, because he won the batting title that year, and since then he hasn't been that, and he doesn't really do anything else well. He's not like a great outfielder. He's not a great second baseman. He's kind of an average fielder at both. He's doesn't hit for power. He doesn't really steal bases. Like, what else does he do other than get a ton of hits? So when he won the batting title, it was like, okay, we love this guy, and he's one of our own. But since then, it's kind of like, I don't know, what's the point?
And when he won the batting title, 73 runs and 62 RBIs and 9 home runs. So his 4 stolen bases, that's just empty. It's empty batting average.
And by the way, that was on a good team. That was on the 22 Mets. Like, they were really good till the last weekend of the year. He should have been better. Alec Boehm, by the way, the IL, it's what's being called a left-hand strain. Only 10-day IL, so he should be back soon. And your guy, Lawrence Butler, had a 409 batting average and 1,300 OPS over a 16-game hit streak. I mean, this dude is awesome.
Yeah, him and Brent Rooker, both. Don't forget about, they have, I don't know what Oakland is all of a sudden feeding their players, but they have something special in the water over there, because they mash right now. And there's another one that I'd like to talk about later that we'll get to that I think is also mashing pretty well relative.
When we pick the podcast out next year, we got to start like a fade Damato segment. Like, you just give the actual picks who you think is going to be really bad that week, and then everyone go run and fade.
Fade him, fade me.
Yeah. Just pick the opposite. Okay. Anyway, for today, though, we have those are the headlines. Unless you got something else.
DeGrom.
Call up? No, just kidding. He's not.
DeGrom's gonna hopefully come up, and I think Scherzer. They are potentially starting this week. So If you need some arms this week, they're probably already picked up, but I'd throw them in your lineup.
All right.
Absolutely. Mhm.
So who else can we throw from the waivers into our lineup? I have one. I actually have two. So let's start with this one. Luke Weaver. Who is he, you might ask? Well, he had his first career save opportunity on Friday against the Chicago Cubs uh, as a member of the New York Yankees. And not only did he get the save in his first save opportunity, but in today's game, the Cubs had an opportunity. Well, they were up one, and the Yankees had an opportunity to go to their closer theoretically, but they brought in Clay Holmes in the eighth inning, down one. So that would tell you that he was not going to be the closer in this game, which means that maybe they were saving Luke Weaver again
Mhm.
for the closer's role. So there's a potential that Luke Weaver could be getting some save opportunities in the coming week or two. And I would very much he's had a really good year for the Yankees. I would like to steal some free saves because a bunch of league mates of yours don't realize that Luke Weaver might actually be the Yankee closer for the next couple weeks.
It's a good call. Especially too, I think that's a good one because, like, for example, I tried again to hop on the Camilo Duvall train and just, I
Mm,
picked him up and it's like maybe now that he's back, he's going to start getting opportunities and he's getting some high leverage opportunities. But I mean, he blew one today, gave up two earned, still got a hold, but not worth it for, one third of an inning. Yeah, relievers are just as important as your starters at this point of the season, right? I mean, one bad reliever can torch your ratios and that's it, right? So Luke Weaver looks like he's been pitching well. For a second, I thought you were referring to Jared Weaver. So yeah, when you're like, who? Yeah. But yes, saw him in the Cubs Yankees game, and yeah, I think that's a good call out. I
how
am
about
gonna
that
go
Anthony Rizzo tribute? Did that make you cry? I cried a little.
not cry, but definitely emotional.
That was
He was
awesome.
he was the last one.
There's nobody better than Rizzo too. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, they did it so perfectly. They show like some memories, fun memories of him, and then they did like his work in the community with obviously his story when he had
Mhm.
cancer when he was on the Red Sox. They ultimately took care of him, the organization, and kept him on their payroll basically so he could get treatment and stuff. Gets traded to San Diego, gets traded again, obviously from San Diego with the Cubs, comes up with the Cubs. So they showed him giving back in the community in Chicago, and he had like 200 campers, I think, or 200 cancer patients and their families sitting in the outfield, all wearing Rizzo shirts at the game on Friday. He got a standing ovation every single at bat, the entire series. And then they show them winning the World Series. I mean, he broke the curse. He catches the final out. He has the hands on the head moment
Mhm.
after the Zobrist, double down the line. Like, how many moments was Rizzo a part of, right? And so it was cool. It was cool to see like Chicago really respected and like was happy to have him back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a staple. He's a god in this town, right? He anywhere he goes, he eats for free. It's one of
Oh,
those,
for sure.
I mean, for the rest of his life. So, yeah, it's definitely
And by the
you're
way,
making me emotional.
from a fantasy perspective, he's looked so much better since he's come back with the Yankees. Like, he just looks lighter. He looks better playing the field, and he got on base again twice today, a hit and a walk. So, Rizzo just looks so much more balanced and lighter on his feet. And so maybe not going to get you a ton of power, but in a stacked lineup, he should have some RBI opportunities and run scored opportunities. I know Soto and Judge haven't been hitting the last week or so, week or two, I should say. And Stanton also like 0 for his last 18 or something like that. So, the Yankees haven't been hitting a ton. Although Stanton got a double today on a fly ball to, I think it was PCA that he just lost in the lights and it landed right next to him or in the sun, I guess. All right, but that's the Yankee talk today. But Rizzo, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, my waiver wire pickup actually is another first baseman, not Anthony Rizzo. This guy's first base outfield eligible. Back to Oakland. We just talked about Butler and Brent Rooker for a second. How about Seth Brown? Have you been following what Seth Brown's been doing? Um, Guy is only rostered in 36% of leagues, but I almost feel like he needs to be picked up everywhere. And I'm kicking myself because I was holding on to Carlos Santana for a little bit too long, I think, right? He
Mm,
had a very good start to the year. He was average, good first baseman. He kind of fell off lately, but I didn't really look at Seth Brown. I think Seth Brown needs to be picked up in pretty much every league. If you look at his surface stats, they don't look great 248 average and 14 home runs, but it's really due to a slow start that he had in the first 3 months. If if you look from July on, it's been phenomenal. He's had over a 300 average in both July and August. And so far in September, he's hitting 435. Since July 14th, in 49 games, we're talking 9 home runs and 28 RBIs, full season average of about 30 home runs and 92 RBIs. So this guy's been good for 3 months. And if you're in a shallow league, I could even see a case, I mean, spot start. One of my outfielders isn't starting. Seth Brown makes perfect sense. You have the multiple position eligibility. You and I talk about that a lot. It's huge, no matter what the position is. So Seth Brown, I feel like super underrated because he's getting overshadowed by Lawrence Butler and Brent Rooker, but he's been phenomenal lately. So I'd go grab him. I mean, 36% rostered is nothing.
Now time for a segment I like to call That Guy's Still in the League. And Trevor Story. That guy's still in the
Yeah,
league.
thought about him. Yeah.
Back, actually, for the Boston Red Sox.
Mm-hmm.
Or is coming back, is being activated anyway for the Boston Red Sox. So I'm not telling you to go pick him up. Maybe he could give you some value, but here's something I don't talk about often. Dynasty leagues, keeper leagues. I mean, I guess not keeper, but dynasty leagues, pick him up. Maybe the Red Sox offense that actually showed flashes this year of young guys being able to put it together. If they can all put it together next year, I assume the Red Sox will actually be, I think they're actually going to be decent next year. I think they'll fall short of the playoffs this year, but next year they could build on that and maybe be a playoff team and be a better offense next year. And maybe he's in the middle of that and you got him for nothing at the end of the season. You just picked him up, because he had a decent run and he actually stays healthy. I don't know if he's dead.
I agree. I don't think he's dead. He's only 31. He's obviously had some rough time with injuries, but would you believe? I mean, every dynasty league I'm in, he's actually picked up already. So
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't
yeah.
shock me.
I mean, honestly, I don't even know if it was he's already picked up. I think it might be just he
People
was
just
never
never benched
dropped.
him. Yeah.
And so I mean, but I think that just goes to show the type of player that we're talking about. I mean, again, we don't expect him to go back to old Trevor Story, but this could be an absolute bargain next year. And if you really need some infield depth and you're in a deeper league right now, I could understand going for it. There's definitely, hopefully, still some juice in there. He's already been caught stealing twice, which is not, well, I guess once. I'm sorry, since he's been back, but we'll see. I don't know. Hopefully, he's got it in him because he's a guy too. I would like to root for Trevor Story. He got
Oh,
out of
yeah, of
Colorado,
course.
and love to see him turn it around. So.
And next year should be like the every fourth year that the Red Sox are all of a sudden out of the blue really, really good for no reason. And if you look at their roster, it's like, yeah, next year would be the year. They do have a lot of young guys who like contributed in flashes at points this year, right? It seems like nobody wanted to win the AL East, still doesn't, right? The Orioles and Yankees both lose again today. I don't know. Maybe the AL East is as mediocre as it's been in a while. You think the Red Sox could be good next year? I wouldn't be shocked. So,
Yeah. A
yeah,
full
that's
year of
all.
Tristan Casas and
Yeah, who knows what that
hopefully
looks
some of the
like?
other
And
guys, right?
Duran and
Yeah.
Bayo, who's
Hopefully,
looked really much better in the second half this year, and
Mhm.
just some of those guys. Who knows what that looks like next year? So, I think the Red Sox and Trevor Story, like you said, he's already been picked up. So, it's a weird place for people to be in if you're not in the fantasy playoffs. You're kind of in a weird in between zone right now. So,
Mhm.
I'd say for people who are not in the fantasy playoffs, why not? It's a good opportunity to go see what you can get out of this guy. I'm not telling you to roster him and start him if you're in the fantasy playoffs. No, I'm
Yeah,
not telling
no.
you. But pick him up now if you're in a dynasty league. Pick him up if you're not in a dynasty league and see what he gives you. And then it's like, okay, somebody who's on my radar now for next year. Maybe he's on your roster next year.
Yeah, I think it's a good call. We'll see. I hope he makes it work.
All right, I have two streaming pitchers, so I'll start again with the first one. Cade Povich is, speaking of that young Boston Red Sox team, he's playing
Sure.
against the Boston Red Sox, and I don't think the Red Sox, their lineup can be great in the future. It's not very good right now. And so his last start, I don't know if you saw this, but against the Chicago White Sox. Now, granted, it is the Chicago White Sox.
Mhm.
Understood. 7 1/3 innings, no runs, 10 strikeouts. Cade Povich is a prospect who the Orioles like. He never had this kind of strikeout output in any of his previous starts. So this is not like yes, it's a little bit surprising, but maybe he keeps it going. Baltimore needs these wins. They, like I said, they're still right there with the Yankees in the division. So Cade Povich, young arm for the Orioles. I've seen him pitch in person a couple of times. I like what he has. I think he could keep it going against Boston this week.
And just really quickly looking at some of Cade Povic's numbers, 2023, 2024, it looks like he's had some pretty good strikeout numbers in the minors without much, much walk rate to speak of. Maybe his ratios are a little
0
high,
walks, by
but
the way, in that game
um,
against Chicago.
yeah. And even when he was kind of struggling throughout the season so far, he's got 2 starts with 5 walks earlier in the year, but most of his starts are very low on the walks. So looks like, I see plenty of strikeout upside just from the very quick look that I've seen from Cade Povich. I think that's a good call. We'll see. I mean, the reason why I like him too, I think now is he's got a double start this week, Monday against Boston, and then the 15th, so Sunday against Detroit. So 2
Yeah, and
starts with high
not
strikeout
great
upside.
offenses. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a good call. Um,
Yeah.
I'm still calling this guy a streamer because the definition that I took for a streamer was under 50%. So the fact that this guy's still under 50%
It's
tells me
unbelievable. I know who
he's
you're talking about.
available.
Yeah.
Is this I have another one too I can do, but Matthew Boyd
I had
is
him too as my
yep, he
second.
was
And
your
by the
second
way,
one.
speaking of the White Sox, starting against the White Sox this week. So
Yep.
start him.
Absolutely. You can qualify him anywhere, lock, waiver wire, whatever. Any way you can get your hands on Matthew Boyd right now, Dynasty, I think you have to take a stab. 18 innings in his last 3 starts, 3 earned runs, 18 strikeouts to just 1 walk. Facing the White Sox, there's nothing else that needs to be said there. I did have another guy that I can mention real quick too.
Please.
He's rostered in over 50% of leagues, 53. So that's why I didn't write him down here. But David Festa should absolutely be considered going against the Angels on Monday and then Cincinnati on Sunday. He's been fine. He hasn't been great, but last 2 outings, 11 innings and 14 strikeouts to 4 runs. So, maybe take a little bit of a hit with the ratios, but again, I don't think it's anything horrible. He hasn't given up more than 4 runs in any start since, June. So, I know he's been up and down and kind of hasn't gone the full distance, but I absolutely think David Festa has strikeout upside, and we've talked about him on this podcast before. I absolutely think he deserves to be in a lot of starting lineups this week. Like I said, 2 pretty soft landing spots in LA and Cincinnati. So, and they're not in Cincinnati. They're not at Cincinnati. So that's even better. David Festa's on my radar this week.
How about your Bears? You're wearing the Bears hat. What'd you think of Caleb
yeah.
Williams in his first start?
Oh God, he was horrible. They were all horrible. Yeah.
Well, he didn't throw a pick. So that's like, I've been there as a Jet fan. I've been that guy, who's like, well, he didn't lose us the game and we won, so it's pretty good, right? Like, I how many times have I done that with Mark Sanchez, Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson? I mean, the list goes on.
That's not what I don't care if he doesn't lose you the game. He should be able to go
I
out
would
and
rather
win
have
the
seen
game.
the Bears lose by 30 today and him look like an NFL quarterback than what we saw. He looked like he's
maybe
not
you
ready
would have.
for
I
this.
wouldn't have. I wanted to see the win.
Why? You think you're winning a Super Bowl this year? Like, what's the matter if you win or lose this year?
Any team could win a Super Bowl.
The playoffs.
What?
They're the 4th best team in their own division.
I will put money on it right now. The Bears make the playoffs.
Okay, let's put money on it.
Okay,
they're not making the playoffs. No, not a chance.
You know why? Is because A, Jordan Love's hurt now, which I think gives them a better chance. B,
that does give them a better chance.
They have have you seen their schedule? Their schedule is gotta be
they play a last place schedule. Correct.
That's got to be something. Their defense looked phenomenal. I mean, if this is the floor for their offense, which it absolutely better be the floor. I mean, Tyson Bagent could even go out and lead this team better than Caleb Williams. So yeah, I think Keenan Allen dropped a touchdown pass today. They look sloppy. So yeah, we'll see.
But how bad? Well, I don't know.
We'll see. Again, this is
like they were going up against a juggernaut. They were going up against one. You mentioned the weak schedule. They're going up against one of the worst teams in football.
You can only play who you can play.
Coach.
You can only play who you can play.
Will Levis. I started calling him.
Oh God.
Zach Wilson Levis.
He kind of single-handedly, I don't want to say threw the game for them. He had some nice plays, but yeah. Anyways, we don't need to talk football.
Zach Will Levison. That's what I was calling
his name. Okay.
All right.
Who's your other streamer? Did you say it?
No, that was Matthew Boyd was my other streamer.
Oh, your other one. Yep. You're right. Yep.
Football, because I figured we were.
Sorry. Yeah. No, I get to because I watched a lot of football today and fantasy teams and baseball I watched too, but a lot of football.
I worked the Yankee game. Other than that, I did not see an inning of baseball. I watched I had to watch the Yankee game because I was producing the Yankee game on the
Right,
radio.
of course.
But even that, I had 3 screens in front of me. I had the Yankee game on one of them because I'm not at the stadium. I'm not at the stadium because they're in Chicago.
Right.
So I was at the studio back in New York. So I had the live stream of the game. So it's not like the TV. I'm not watching the game. I'm watching a live stream of what they basically what they have in the booth.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the
Sure.
live shots with like the
Yeah.
overhead shot and the behind the pitcher
Yeah.
shot.
It's not the game per se.
Yeah, I'm not
but
watching the Yankee game. I'm
yeah,
not watching
yeah.
like the Yankee broadcast. I get a few replays, whatever.
Mhm.
So I have the Yankee stream up in front of me, like the live cast, and then I had Red Zone, and then I had the Giant game. So, and
There
then
you
once
go.
the Giant game was over, I watched the Cowboy game, which was after that on Fox. Anyway,
You want to know? Sorry, real quick. Last thing I'll say. You want to know how I know it's opening day is because the only food I have consumed today is wings.
the
Only food. I woke up, had lunch, wings. Dinner was leftover
So
wings.
Thursday, I have to say this. Thursday, I made boneless wings, and I made excellent boneless wings, and I just made a ton of them.
Yeah, sure.
And it was just me, and I was sitting here.
Good for you.
I had a beer, I had
The
boneless wings. I was literally just sitting
game.
here alone. I also had. You want to hear this? I don't think I had chips and salsa with it too. Very classic, like game
Right.
day food. But you'll never guess what I had with my chips and salsa and boneless wings. Never.
Is it? I'm assuming it's another food of some sort.
Yeah, it's a
No,
vegetable.
no. Oh no, what do you got?
Brussels sprouts, roasted Brussels sprouts.
Interesting.
I love roasted Brussels sprouts. I can't.
Really?
Yes, I'm
Wow.
sorry.
Okay, I learned something about you. No,
Yeah.
that's good.
All right.
All right. What else we
MVP
got?
of the week. I have an honorable mention. So let me give my honorable
Sure.
mention.
Go ahead.
And you could give yours, and then I'll give mine.
Okay.
My honorable mention is Gunnar Henderson. Self-fulfilling prophecy because I made him my lock of the week last week. So naturally, he is my MVP of the week. Honorable mention, at least. Let's just give it to you. He's 3 for 4 today. So overall, that puts him at 12 for 28 on the week with 3 stolen bases, 3 home runs, 7 RBIs, 6 runs scored, an on-base percentage over 500. Yeah, he had a good week.
Yeah, that's a great week.
Yep.
Happy to hear it.
Number 3 fantasy baseball rank.
Very cool. I decided there was a ton of guys up at the top that I wouldn't have expected, right? And Eugenio Suarez, Taylor Ward had a really nice week. Wyatt Langford,
Yes.
saw both of those guys or all those guys, and I thought about going that way, but I wanted to give a little bit more attention to this pitcher because I had made a trade for him earlier in the season that I think I discussed when I traded him for TJ Friedel. And I bought him at a low, and that low is definitely rising back up. Mackenzie Gore had a good week, and he's had a good last 3 starts. Quality starts in all of them.
Really good.
Yeah. Quality starts in his last 3 starts. We're talking 18 innings, 4 earned runs, 19 strikeouts, and 2 walks. He's been great. I thought about throwing him as a lock of the week, but I think I have another guy that I've talked about a little bit that I want to throw in there. But Mackenzie Gore's been great, and there's no reason to think he can't keep it up. I think he had a poor stretch after the All-Star break, but you have to
expect that. Yeah,
you have to go with the ebb and flows. And at this point in the season, it's definitely a what have you done for me lately? And Mackenzie Gore's done enough for me lately, and I know his track record to say, okay, I'm going to start him because his next start is a tough one against Atlanta. Then he's got Miami. And so if you can weather the storm, it looks like he's going out Tuesday and Sunday. If you need 2 starts this week, I think Mackenzie Gore makes plenty of sense.
Yeah. And again, another one of those guys young guy, we've talked about it so many times with the Washington guys, young guy, so much upside, and they're going to give him leash because they have nothing to lose. And they only want these guys to get more and more experience.
That leash could be good and bad, right? I mean,
yeah, no,
of
course, it's a double-edged sword, but yes, I think for these purposes, if you believe in the guy, like another one of those guys who I was going to bring up is who's the first baseman they've been starting, the Nationals, Yankee farmhand. He was in the Yankee system. He's not rostered in a lot of leagues. I'll tell you. Oh, Chaparro, Andres Chaparro.
Sure, right.
He's had games where he looks like, man, this guy's swing. He looks like he could be one of like the next thing, and then he has games where he's swinging out of his heels and there's pitches in the other batter's box he's swinging at. But it's just like the good with the bad, he's going to get the at-bats, Yeah. So I've never put him on this list, on any of these lists because I think he's too volatile. But he's an example of a guy in Washington who's going to get that opportunity, and like you should just be aware of that name because would you be shocked if Andres Chaparro is a guy who has a bunch of home runs and is like actually doing really well next year? Like all of a sudden in the middle of the season, we're like, man, can't believe Andres Chaparro went in like the 8th round, like in the 20th round. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you get what I'm saying.
Well, that's how I'm not going to put this comp because I don't think it's going to happen, but that's exactly what happened with Lawrence Butler. I mean,
Yeah,
Lawrence Butler hit the
100%.
shit out. There was never any question about whether he could hit the ball. It was can
Yeah.
he hit it consistently? And Chaparro feels like that. I mean, his last 4 games, he's got 2 home runs and 7 RBIs. Like,
Yep.
dude's got power. And yeah, I mean, it could be one of those you look back and wow, why are we so off on this guy? Because that's how a lot of people, at least myself included, feel about Lawrence Butler.
Well,
So,
and also you're not watching a ton of, and the same could be said for
mhm,
the A's last year, the
yeah,
end of the year when they were one of the worst teams in the league. You're not watching a ton of national games. I mean, I like watching national games because I love listening to Bob. What's his name? The freaking guy who writes the scorecard. Um,
let's see. Bob Carpenter.
Bob Carpenter, great broadcaster. Excellent. I've actually corresponded with him via email a few times. I've never actually spoken to him in person, but we've emailed back and forth. He's a really nice, great guy, also, seemingly. And so Bob Carpenter, cool dude, great broadcaster. Unfortunately, I mean, it's been a rotating cast of clowns as when it comes to the color commentator there.
Sure.
So it's kind of unfortunate for Bob, but still, I like listening to some of their games. But like, yeah, I like watching those young guys. So, they can come out of nowhere and surprise you next year. And that's our job to let you know about those guys right
Mhm.
now so that you're not caught off guard next year going into the season. Andres Chaparro, maybe on your radar.
Yeah, and Gore could be another one too, right? You look at his surface stats, and people might go, I don't know." But next, when that happens next year, and people look at his 2024, now you're more prepared. And you can say, "Well, no, I know he's better than that." Um,
Exactly.
so
So my MVP of the week, I don't think I gave it yet.
yeah,
My
sure.
actual MVP of the week is, drumroll please, Cal Raleigh. And the reason I'm going with Cal Raleigh is because I talk about this all the time, the catcher eligibility. We've been so weak at the position. And while the Mariners have pretty much played themselves out of contention, unfortunately,
Mhm.
um, he has been awesome. 10 RBIs, 6 runs scored, 2 home runs, and a 400 on base over the last week. And for a position that hasn't been giving you a ton, and maybe, just maybe, um, we're going to see more of Austin Wells. He started all 3 games in the series against the Cubs, which he's been starting one, sitting one, starting one, sitting one. And he's been yanked around, jerked around by the Yankees. And the reason why that's significant is today in a third consecutive day game with another game tomorrow. The Yankees traveling back home for another game tomorrow and Garrett Cole starting. They've always started Jose Trevino with Cole. So the fact, like, to the point where I do these, like, we have to put these like player IDs into the broadcast where coming back from commercial break, we'll have a player, and they don't like when we use players who aren't in the starting lineup. And I instinctively used an Jose Trevino player ID today because I was like, all right, I'm sure he's starting with Cole. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, third game in a row, there's no way. It's the third game in a row. They have another game tomorrow after traveling home. There's no way that Wells is starting. And then I looked back at the lineup. I was like, oh wait, shoot, I got to change that one out. They're actually starting Wells. Like, I was shocked. So, and that's just a little inside baseball thing. It's kind of dumb, but my point is, if they're really giving over the reins, if it's like go time for the Yankees now, which I don't believe they'll ever get to that point where it's go time until it's like, they wake up in the playoffs like they did with freaking, IKF playing at shortstop every day until they got to the playoffs. And now, oh, Oswald Peraza is going to start in game 3 of the ALCS. Or the same thing that they did in the wild card game where they're starting that kid Vasquez over Gleyber Torres at shortstop in the wild card game in 2021 against Boston. Like, they do some things that are mind-boggling. But maybe the Yankees are finally saying, "Hey, it's go time," and Austin Wells is going to play every day. So, look out for that. I'm sure he's rostered in your league. But if you've been like, "How do I start this guy?" I can't because, especially if it's one of those leagues where you set your lineup once a week. It's like, how do I even roster this guy if he's only going to play 3 days a week? Maybe. Now, Austin Wells is going to play more often, but Cal Riley, if you could get that kind of production out of catcher,
So
MVP.
how do we go from Cal Raleigh to Austin Wells?
I'm just saying because
Yeah,
catcher,
no, it was funny. Yeah, that was
yeah. I was just bringing it all back home.
Yeah, we've talked
Um,
about catchers quite a bit, quite a bit on
a
this
ton,
podcast. There's so many
because
because
it's such a
there's
black hole.
it feels like, this guy will pop up for a second and then he'll
Yeah.
disappear, and then this guy will pop. So it's, you just got to be
And Cal
flexible and
Riley's
fluid.
someone we've talked about, I think, like probably almost as much as anyone since the beginning of the season, since like draft season. We're
Mhm.
like, man, but his upside, those, he could hit home runs that no other catcher is hitting. Yeah, but the downside, and we've seen mostly the downside. So I want to highlight the upside now that we're seeing it.
Yeah, I think we know who Cal Raleigh is. He's a 210 hitter who's going to hit 30 bombs hopefully every year. 20, well, maybe not every year, but at least
And
20,
it's similar to
25
like
and
what we said about Schwarber. Like in a week
Mhm.
to week league, he's really
So,
frustrating. He might be more of a roto league type guy where at the end of the
yeah.
season you look up, it's like he's a net positive. But
Mhm.
in a week to week league, if he's losing you 6 weeks out of every 8 weeks, then
Yeah.
he's probably a net negative.
Yeah, it's a good call.
All right, lock
Um
of the week. Lock it in.
this is a little weird because I hate talking. I like to talk about as many different players as I can, but I just talked about this guy last week, and if you remember, I actually told you not to start him. Now he's in my lock of the week. Like what? Lucas Ursig for the Kansas City Royals. Last week I said don't start him. He's got to earn it. Well, if you watched him this week, I think he went out and earned it. Last 3 appearances, 3 innings, 3 strikeouts, just 1 hit, no earned runs. Most importantly, 3 saves. So 3 up, 3 down. If you need saves this week and you have him, throw Lucas Ursig into your lineup. This is at the point of the season. We're at this, like, again, I just said it earlier, right? What have you done for me lately? Identifying the hot streaks. Lucas is hot right now. If I need saves, I'm going to look at the last week and say, okay, how well did you do? What's your track record? And he's got a good track record. He kind of stumbled a little bit, but I'm absolutely riding him this week if I need saves, and definitely I do in one league. So he definitely is making the starting lineup, and fingers crossed. This is the point of the season, and I was thinking about mentioning this earlier, but like this is the point where, like, if Corbin Carroll is still struggling at this point in the season and he's on your team, you have to consider dropping, right? You have to start considering dropping players that you would never ever think to drop in the fantasy playoffs, because this is it, right? This is
Go
what
time.
you have worked all
Yeah.
season for. This is go time. There is no waiting around. If you need innings, you're looking to drop maybe some of your best people, but obviously within reason, obviously within the context. But yeah,
You can't play
Lucas
next
needs
week
to
if you
go
don't
in.
win this week.
Exactly. Yep, that's exactly right. So
That's what it comes
it's a
down to.
different
And I love
mentality.
we love accountability on this show. When you get something wrong,
Yeah.
when you get something right, flap your wings a little bit, toot your own horn. I get it, but when we get something wrong, we want to point that out as well. My lock of the week is an interesting one. I mentioned the Orioles being it's go time for them. I think the Yankees, it's go time for them also. They're coming home to face first they have I'm forgetting now, but first they have the Kansas City Royals and then they have the Boston Red Sox. They play every day this week, so no off days for the Yankees this week. And Jazz Chisholm Jr. Finally, the Yankees are playing a bunch of righties. They've been facing lefty after lefty after lefty. Finally, they're going to face a bunch of righties over the next week. I looked at it. I don't know how many it is, but I think it's more righties than lefties for the first time in a while for them. So Jazz Chisholm, it seems like every day he does something, whether it's stealing bases, getting on base, he just makes something happen for this team. I think he's going to be a big part of this homestand for the Yankees. It's a huge homestand for the Yankees. Kansas City's a good team. They're not a great team. They're not great pitching. The Yankees, the last time they were really great was that series beginning of June in Kansas City, or mid-June in Kansas City. I think the Yankees know it's go time now against Kansas City, against the Red Sox, rivalry weekend against the Red Sox. I like the Yankees, and I like Jazz Chisholm to go off for the Yankees this week.
Yeah, I don't see. I mean, just from MLB, they don't have the probables for the Yankees Red Sox series, but yeah, 2 out of the 3 against Kansas City will be righties. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I don't
outside
see
of Cole Reagans. So yeah, I think it's a good call.
Yeah, because even you're going up against Singer and Lugo, who have had good years,
Mhm.
both of them. I agree, but you know, they're not world beaters still. Like as right-handed pitchers, I think Jazz as a lefty should have a decent time with them. He'll be right in the middle of that lineup. Come on, you got to assume that after the weeks that Soto and Judge have had the last couple of weeks, you got to assume that they're just gonna turn it up a little bit and that this team is gonna get it clicking offensively. I mean, you know, it's nice that they held Chicago's the first time actually since 2014 that the Yankees played in a series where neither team homered. Neither team homered in the White Sox in the Cubs Yankees
Cubs,
series.
Yankees. Huh? I didn't think of that. I
Kinda
didn't see that stat. Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, first time since 14 the Yankees played in a series where neither team homered. And the wind was blowing out today, they were saying. They kept
Wow.
talking about the wind
Yeah.
blowing out in Chicago today. Usually the wind was blowing in the first two games, but it was blowing out today. Usually leads to a lot of home runs in Chicago. I mean, Sammy Sosa, you talk about steroids. How about the wind blowing out in Wrigley Field? That could like lead to 17 more home runs. Forget about steroids. Forget about
Yeah, I mean, if Bonds was in Chicago, he would have hit
he would have hit
900
90.
home runs.
Yeah. If Aaron Judge was in Chicago, he would
Yeah.
have hit 700 home runs in a season.
Jazz to New York is probably one of my favorite
He's been
trade
awesome.
deadlines
He's been an awesome Yankee.
acquisitions.
You
Yep.
look at the stats before New York and with New
Mhm.
York,
Yeah.
he's really been awesome. Real boost. We talked about this on the trade deadline episode. Like, who's going to get a boost from playing in a new place and having that energy? Well, he's eligible at multiple positions, second, third, outfield. So
I do want to mention one other guy that we haven't talked about who fits this category perfect is Connor Norby. With Miami Marlins has
yeah,
been a stud, and even today, 2 home runs today, a home run yesterday. That was before. I mean, he was hot before then, and
he goes in
um,
that like Nationals A's category, right? Where like he's going to
mhm.
play a ton and be
he's
aware of this person.
yeah. I mean, he was good with Baltimore. It was just
Yep.
they were overloaded, and this is now you're
Yeah,
seeing it.
and there's a lot of guys with Baltimore like that.
Joey Ortiz is another one. Yeah,
Yeah, the guys
I
in
mean,
Milwaukee. I was about to say, yep.
yeah, he fell off a little bit, but
Yep.
same concept.
Exactly. All right, that's a good episode, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Good stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch the end of this football game. But until
All right.
next time, like, subscribe, share the podcast. Appreciate everyone for listening. See you.